So this really has informed our mission from a DOER standpoint for the Commonwealth here. We're all about a greener energy future, and it's all about environmentally better and economically better. And it's all about getting the facts and figuring out how best to make that happen. First and foremost, it's energy efficiency. Second, it's growing greener energy resources. Third, it's assuring that we continue to have reliable and cost-effective, as best we can, and hopefully improving cost position, resources from our energy sector. And then lastly, it's about growing green energy jobs. And we've got initiatives across that are coordinated across all of these things and some really significant progress along that front. One tool kit that we were given, we've got a number of tools in our executive branch, and we're moving on all of those as aggressively as we possibly can. But we also had phenomenal working relationship with our legislature in Massachusetts, which is very different than the Washington experiences. Our legislature passed in 2008 a series of about 6 bills that fundamentally revamp energy for Massachusetts and really gives us tools to move forward in a very different way than any state has had before. Center point on that was the Green Communities Act, and the Green Communities Act was passed with 100% of the Senate and the House voting in favor of this. This is both sides of the aisle. Every single senator and congressman, representative voted in favor of this, including our state senator, Scott Brown. And that was because they saw the logic in this. We can make a better energy future by working together. It's too bad that we can't do that from a Washington standpoint. Those policies that we've got in hand and that we're moving against are really helping us to improve our carbon perspective here, our emissions, pretty dramatically. Our carbon emissions, with, as you saw from some of those earlier charts, we've changed out our generation fleet. We've been really focused on energy efficiency, have been relatively flat since 1990. So we've grown our economy 20 or 30% since then, and we've done it at increasingly lower carbon basis. And those policies that we have in hand now, as we've calculated it, set us on a path to be 19% lower carbon, largely through energy efficiency, somewhat through renewables and transportation changes. And those are just the policies in hand. So continuing to grow our economy and getting to a much lower carbon future. Energy efficiency, as I've indicated, we've been doing it for 20 years in the state. It used to be under a regime where we had a prescribed amount of money that we could go out and try and get as much energy efficiency as we could get for that. Many of the programs and offerings were sold out in the first few months of the year. So the program delivery channels, the utilities, program administrators, literally tried to make sure not too many people knew about these programs because they didn't want people upset when they couldn't serve them. The mandate now is all cost-effective energy efficiency in Massachusetts, and we are on track to delivering 20 or 30% of what our energy needs would have been in 2020 from our energy efficiency side. We're right now delivering about 10% of our total energy needs through the energy efficiency programs, and we see that tripling over the next decade. Cogeneration is a big part of that. For the first time, we're really working with the utilities and all stakeholders to push cogeneration. We've got decoupling in place. We're actually got incentives in place from the utilities to do studies and try and advance this. And we've got a new sort of incentive program for cogeneration and commercial and industrial good thermal applications to help further that along. And it's really a massive mind change from the utilities of the past perspective, where they fundamentally resisted cogeneration as something that would hurt their revenue, be difficult to interconnect in their systems, but it just makes a lot of economic sense and a lot of environmental sense. And so we now have the programs in place to really make it happen, and we're looking forward to, we've seen what will likely be a doubling of cogeneration in the last couple of years and a doubling again in the next couple of years from the projects that are underway. Renewables, we're meeting our renewable portfolio standard with the actual kilowatt hours that are being generated, and the forecast looks like that's going to continue. One of the big areas is wind. We've had 10-fold increase in wind development in the state, and this is when we took office, Governor Patrick took office, there may have been 4 or 5 turbines spinning, and now it's over 20, and it looks like it's doubling again for next year. Solar, we've got over 2,000 projects that now have been done across the state in schools, businesses, homes, and town facilities, and it's really quite impressive growth here as well. 20-fold increase from 3.5 megawatts in prior to 2007 to 70 megawatts that is going to be online or operating by the end of, or under contract by the end of this year. There's still a lot of renewable challenges that are out there. We've got biofuels that we've been trying to push, but it hasn't worked out yet. Biomass, we, for the state, has taken the first hard look at the biomass circumstances, and the emissions that come out of a biomass plant, obviously carbon's going up, and it takes a long time before it's getting sequestered in the trees as it's coming back to us. And consequently, we're in the process of revamping all our biomass regulations to take into account the best science around that, which has caused a lot of the industry that was pushing the traditional electric-only biomass plants to step back and say, we've got to revamp our approaches on this. The last point on this slide is the federal circumstance, and I have been in Congress testifying both at the Senate and the House in front of Senator Bingham's committee, Waxman-Markey committee, and I had a lot of optimism from a federal standpoint last year. I don't have that at this time, and I really would encourage folks to almost stop looking for answers from Washington. It would be nice if we could get it, but it's sort of the facts are pretty abundantly clear now. We're not going to get the leadership out of Washington that we need to really move forward on an energy policy. And so it really comes to individuals, our businesses, our communities, our homes, companies that we're working with to say, wait a minute, I can create a better energy future for ourselves, even regardless of Washington moving forward on these matters, and really putting the priorities on the things that make economic sense and make a difference. Last area of focus has been workforce initiatives, and we're working across the state through Voc Tech schools, community colleges, to train the new workforce to really get into these delivery models, particularly around the energy efficiency side. I think we've got, like, starting next month, some 20 programs going. Each one will have upwards of 50 to 100 folks in to get trained and certified in the latest and greatest work methods around energy efficiency to really help ramp up the delivery of some of these energy efficiency programs. Massachusetts has done an amazing job at winning support from the federal government from the Stimulus Act. One example of that is what are called the ARPA-E program, which is monies that are going into new companies to sort of have breakthroughs around some of the energy issues. Massachusetts, all told, I just saw a federal report that indicates that Massachusetts is going to get about $452 million from stimulus funds to go into energy projects and companies in Massachusetts, which is really quite remarkable. On a per capita basis, if we'd gotten $90 million, I think it was calculated, we would be at about the right average on a per capita basis. So we're at like 5 times that average amount there. And it's partially because we got so many great things going on in this state. Companies like EnerNOC and other companies that are out there innovating and creating new solutions, as well as our efficiency programs in our communities that are really driving to new solutions around our energy circumstances. Venture capital is still coming into a lot of Massachusetts clean tech companies, even though it is really dried up somewhat for a lot of other parts of the country. And the stimulus projects, this is a map that's up on our website that shows that it's touching every corner of the state and all kinds of projects, from real-time energy monitoring through EnerNOC to energy efficiency programs, renewable projects that are going on. It's really been quite exciting to see the change in the platform that we're building for making better decisions on our energy future. So from my perspective, our energy future, getting it right, really matters a lot. It matters a lot. I often harken back to the comment, the quote from Martin Luther King about the arc of history is long and it bends towards justice. In my mind, the arc of history around our energy future is obviously also very long, and it bends towards a much greener energy future. It's the right thing to do for ourselves, for our companies, for our children, and for their children, and what will come next, that we can do something better around energy than we have done to date. So getting it right matters, getting it done soon matters, and getting it done really big matters. Lots of work remains. We need leadership that I think is going to come from companies like that are in this room here, and individuals that are out there in communities making things happen. And then we need others to follow us in that. And I wouldn't wait for others to emerge. I think it's really about us to making it happen. There's an opportunity here for being a showcase both for the nation, the world, and what's possible. And I'm glad from my perspective to be able to bring some of my experiences to bear and make a difference for Massachusetts, and hope that together we can all make a difference for the country and for the world, because it really matters to me. And with that, I'll just open it up for any comments or questions that any of you might have in the audience. I think we have a little bit of time before the next session. So thank you for your interest in this.
Questions for Phil?
You mentioned state leadership that obviously is being provided here in Massachusetts, and I assume you speak to a lot of state leaders in other states. Are you seeing a lot of other states also rise to this challenge and putting in policies that you think will have the same effect as you can?
I do. It's really different every state. One of the things that the stimulus did is it put money through existing channels. It put a lot of money through existing channels, and there were two big areas of existing channels. One, weatherization programs. The other was what's called the state energy program. And in the past, the state energy program was funded on the federal level at like $50 million a year, $25 million a year. Stimulus money put $3.1 billion through that channel. That is moving through all the state energy offices like my own. And so we've been in constant sort of communication and contact amongst folks to really figure out how best to put that to work and really make it happen. And there's just enormous excitement about what's going on. Every state figured out from its own perspective what made sense, but there's a lot of excitement. The challenge is what happens after stimulus. In Massachusetts, we've got all that legislative backbone that knows that we're going to be going forward on these matters. In a lot of other states, there's not. And so we're working across all the states to document and demonstrate what the benefits are from these programs, this spending, and try and find other ways to sort of fund it. Because it's not going to come from the federal government on a grand scale like it did. You know, if we have to do a stimulus program every year to keep us going, we're in real trouble. But there are other ways. A lot of this obviously is cost effective. It makes economic sense for us, and yet we're not getting it done. And so we have to figure out mechanisms amongst the private sector particularly to bring private money into these projects and really make a difference. And I think there's a lot that we can do to break down the institutional barriers and make it happen.